Hello and welcome. In this video, we will look at how we can update a Power BI report to work with a different BIM model. What we're looking at is a simple report that we've set up using one Revit model. However, we may want to change the model that is being used in this report, but keep the entirety of the report as it was. You may want to do this for several different reasons. Maybe you have created a report and you want to test it out with a different model, or you have a new version of the model that needs to be replaced in a work in progress report that you're working on. So in order to do this, it's very simple. We're going to basically change the model that is being used currently inside of this pre-existing report. On the report side itself, nothing too fancy is happening here. Basically, we have a report of a building. We're focusing on walls, and we have classified the walls based whether they are bearing or not bearing, created a theme, and applied the theme on the building itself. So we can sort of analyze the difference in structure. And also, we have some information about quantities, so length, area, and volumes of these walls inside of our building. So we've done all this work, we've created the report, we've imported some external data sources and mashed everything together, did some data transformation. We want to reapply all of this logic using a different model. So let's see how we do that. First of all, let's head on over to the Vcad file manager. So we want to find the model that we're going to be using inside of a report. So the new model we want to use. If we go on over to the info section, here we have the two things that we need to be looking at. So we're going to want to change the reference to the slot. The slot is the container that basically holds the file that we're using inside of the report. That'll be this here. And also, because in this case we're using a Revit file, we also want to copy a reference to the specific Revit view that we're using inside of the that we want to use inside of the report. Keep in mind that this operation is not suggested if you are switching types of file format. So it'd be okay to do from a Revit to a Revit. However, we do not suggest you do so switching from a Revit to an Naviswork or from an IFC to a Revit or anything like that. Because the data sets do change a bit and it can be a little complicated. So in that case, we suggest you just start from a fresh new template that was designed for that specific file format. In any case, let's see how we do this. So we're going to first of all copy this file ID and use our button. And we're going to paste it into a notepad because we're going to need it in a moment. So just write this here, file ID, and paste it in. Okay. Next, as I mentioned, because it's a Revit file, we want to copy the ID of a view that we're going to be rendering. We can do so by going here to the View GUI list. Here we are presented with a table that lists all of the views present in our model. Specifically in this case, we're just going to be looking at the default 3D view. So we want to copy this GUI ID and paste it in here. So we're going to call this view ID. I'm going to paste that in. Okay. So these are the two things that we're going to need to be updating inside of our report for it to work. So let's head on over back to the report. Now in Vcad, when we're using Vcad, there's two things we need to think about. One is the actual rendering of the model, and the other is the data that is coming in. So basically, all of the data sets that are retrieved and that are coming from the specific model that we are rendering, we want to change those. So to change those, we're going to go over to the Transform Data section. In here, we want to look for the Vcad zip CSV data source. This is the initial data source from which all of the other data sets are built. If we go ahead and have a look at the advanced editor, we can see that the data here is coming from web content, specifically the Vcad APIs. It's retrieving the file information for a specific file over here and for a specific view over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the file ID. We're going to replace it inside of this request over here. And we're going to do the same thing for the view. Keep in mind, the view section of this call is only present for Revit files. So if you're using IFCs, Navisworks, or anything else, you do not need to change, you do not need to worry about view IDs. Let's copy the ID and replace it over here. So from the equal signs up to the end of the code. Okay. Now we can go ahead and click done. We'll see that the data table is reloaded. To make sure that everything is working, we can just have a quick peek at the Vcad assets section. Perfect. We can go ahead and close and apply. At this point, Power BI will start reloading the tables. To make sure that everything is being loaded completely, we can see how the model data were changed. So right now we have project address, which is 210 King East, Toronto. This is the information from our old model. Now that it updates, we can see that the address changes. So the new project address says enter address here, so no one defined the address for the specific file. That isn't important. What's important is that the actual information has changed. So as we can see from all the various visuals inside of our summary page. Also, you can see here we have all the views that were defined in this new model that we're using. Now, if we go ahead and switch back to our walls review page, you'll see that a model is loaded in. However, this will be our old model, and it'll look a little strange, it'll look a little different, because right now what is happening is the Vcad viewer is trying to match the old object IDs from the old model that it's rendering over here with the new object IDs that are coming from the data that we've just updated. So what we need to do is we need to also tell the Vcad viewer that it needs to render the new model. So to do that, we're going to select the custom visual, head on over to the format section, and under model data, here we see we have a file ID field, which we of course want to update with our file ID that we copied before. And then also, again, because this is a Revit file, we're going to go to the forge options, and here we have a view GUID section. We want to also update this with our new view ID. Okay, now we're good to go. We can just switch tabs and then come back over to give Vcad the chance to reload the correct model in. And we'll see that a different model is being loaded in. This is a hospital. The geometries are being correctly linked to the data that is coming from our data sets. And we can see how all of the logics that had been set up remain the same. So all the data transformations that we're pulling out, the different types of walls, so bearing and not bearing, are still functioning. And also the theme that we had applied is still being applied, only over the new data in the new model. This just took a couple minutes, and we've basically updated our report to work with a completely different model, but keeping all of the pre-existing logic. One thing to note is if you have multiple report pages in your report, or even if in the same page you have multiple instances of the Vcad custom visual, so the actual rendering, each instance of the viewer will need to be updated. This means that we fixed the wall review, but if we go over to the assets detail page, we'll see that the Vcad custom visual in this page is still rendering the old model. So, and again, it's rendering it a little wonky because it's not able to match the object IDs from the new geometry, from the old geometries with the new object IDs coming from the dataset. So of course we want to update the Vcad custom visual also here. Again, it's a very quick operation. We're just going to copy the file ID, paste it in the file ID section, and because it's a Revit file, we're also going to copy the view ID and update that as well. Now we can go ahead and switch tabs and over. This, by the way, would also be how you would update your report to make it work on the same model, but with a different view if you're using a Revit file, for example. So you would leave the file ID the same, and you would only change the view reference. Okay, and here we go. We can see we have our hospital being loaded in. It correctly matches all of the geometries with the data that is coming from the new data set, and we're good to go. We can use our new report, or actually the report which is built like the old report, but with the information and the model coming from our new Revit file. Thank you for joining us for this video, and stay tuned for new and upcoming videos on how to use Vcad.